Good evening and welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shilo, and of course, I got my trusty co host with me, Mr. Marv. How are you?
I'm doing pretty okay, Shilo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We had a wild week last week while I was gone for the. Sorry about that. My ears. While I was gone for the safety conference down there in Bismarck, I learned a lot. I was glad to got. Geez, I just got tongue tied there. Sorry about that, but just got a lot to learn and the speakers were good, and we had a couple really good keynote speakers, and maybe hope to have some of them on in the next months to come here after we get done with our political season. So, but yeah, I'm glad to be home. This last weekend I left from Bismarck. We went out to Billings to the horse sale. I had Luke with me and his brother and a couple of his nephews. So that was fun, fast trip, and we got to see some good horses. And so here we are.
Perfect.
So tonight we have a guest. We're going to do it audio because we've been having some technical difficulties. That's why we're running late tonight. So the DPI candidate Jim Bartlett is on the phone with you, correct, Marv?
Yes, he is. So
Okay, let's
we're
bring
just
him on.
issues getting video up. How are you doing this evening, Jim?
I'm doing good. Yep, just heading home after driving through the blizzard in Grand Forks.
Well, there you go. So I don't have your face up, but we got a picture of your press release up so people can at least see who's talking here. So it's better than nothing tonight. So yeah, I was hearing it was pretty crazy snow out that way. You're up in Botno, you said?
Yes, yeah, we have a farm and we deliver products to around the state and Grand Forks every 2 weeks. So today was the day for Grand Forks, and then we relay to other drivers to Fargo.
Well, awesome. So it sounds like you kind of threw your hat in the ring for Department of Public Instruction Superintendent. The general question that we ask for everybody starting out, since you haven't been on with us before, is tell us a little about yourself and the crazy journey that led you right up to today.
Yes, well, it's a very long story, but I'll start with the idea that I did teach engineering at NDSU for 17 years, mostly mechanical and manufacturing topics. And then we moved on to directing the North Dakota Homeschool Association for 6 years and was on the board before that. And we then moved on after that to farming. As we moved out of the NDSU, we really started understanding the philosophies of our times and secular humanism and those kind of things. And so I didn't want to continue participating in that at NDSU. And so we put our efforts into Christian education and home education after that. And that led us to help start a couple Christian college operations and Christian school operations. And then the farm, as part of the homeschool things we were doing, we started a small farm, and now we keep growing the farm. We went into last few years, my son Peter and I took a business course. It's basically a program like a business coach working with us for 4 years to help get the business side of the farm growing. But for a long time, since really 1984, I've had an interest in understanding things. I became a Christian in 1984, hitchhiking in Europe. And long story, but basically I ended up living with a pastor in Indiana while I was attending Purdue for engineering. And that pastor was traveling to North Dakota to help Christian schools and homeschools defend themselves against the school districts for educational problems they were having, because it was illegal to homeschool at the time, and some of the Christian schools were having difficulties with the laws. And so the pastors of the church I was in traveled there, and I started seeing why they were doing it. And so they were understanding the philosophies that were being taught in the public schools, and I learned it early, in 1984, and studying it ever since. So I really appreciate the root problems that have been happening and can explain what they are and diagnose them quite nicely that way. And so I can go further, but that was kind of a little bit of a personal introduction. We've got 4 boys. They're all grown, have children, or some of them have children, some of them pregnant. But yeah, that's what we do.
There you go. So you've been an educator, you've been a homeschooler. We had Thor and Amber on a couple weeks ago, right before the homeschooler convention. So we did get a chance to talk with them, which was nice. So what led to your run for DPI now?
Yes, well, I do education reformation talk and seminar, and I've studied those things for years, and anytime it gets near me, I explain those kind of things. The church people that we fellowship with and are always studying those things as well. So it's kind of like in my DNA to know about the education topics. So then we talking with the District 6 chairman and his wife, and just thinking about what we could do to help with the legislative action this year. And then one of them mentioned that the DPI position should be improved upon. And I thought that would be way too much fun, because I know the problem, I know the solution, and yeah, so that's where I started.
Hey Jim, this is Shilo.
Yes.
So with that being said, I guess my first question is if elected to this position, what is your first item of business that you would like to take care of? What's the first problem that we're gonna work on?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the policy and change the strategic objective so that the schools would start following the 10 Commandments. And we could think of it in terms of the North Dakota Constitution and morality. There's 4 aspects mentioned at the beginning of the education section in the North Dakota Constitution that the students should come out of school with. So things like integrity and morality, patriotism, intelligence, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So an example, we can start with morality. So if you think about it, the North Dakota Constitution was written in 1889, and Noah Webster's dictionary, he was the founding father of American scholarship and education. He wrote his dictionary in 1828. And so if you look up the definition of moral in the 1828 dictionary, it gives a clear reference to the ability to discern good and evil. So then if you look up good and evil, and you'll see a list of scripture under good, a list of scripture under evil, and you all of a sudden you notice, hey, this Constitution we have in North Dakota must have had a Christian context, besides the fact that in their preamble it says we are grateful to Almighty God.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the starting point, and you can really a context in the strategic objective or vision would be to implement the 10 Commandments really as it was intended, as morality from the top down. And then, but now the top down approach is not my point, but the idea is that's where it could start, because with the 10 Commandments, you'd end up with a limited government, a decentralized government, and eventually decline the influence and even existence of the DPI. So it worked to decrease the influence of the DPI over time, as well as any of the government controls over education. Because if you think about things biblically, which is what I do, then it's like, okay, show me where the government is in charge of childhood education. It's not there. And so the idea is that parents need to be in charge of the children, and under God, they're responsible for that education, not the state. And what happened and has happened through state and federal controls on education got all these crazy ideas, right? Crazy stories.
Mhm.
Everybody has one. But those crazy stories can be pinned very nicely to specific philosophies and philosophers and paths of indoctrination that's happened over the years.
Mhm.
So I can elaborate on all of those, but just the starting point would be to adjust the strategic objective for the DPI so that it is moral.
With that being said, I'm glad that you came on. I have not been able to hear you speak anywhere. This is the first time that I'm getting to chat with you, but I know. So, with that being said, Jim, you're kind of scaring people when you talk about the Bible, right? And
Yeah, it's
one of
pretty.
the comments that I get now is that, well, if he wants to put the Bible back in school, in public schools, what about the Catholic schools and the Christian schools? What are they going to do then? And so I was wondering what your response to that would be.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. The idea is, first of all, I think that Christian schools, Catholic schools are doing great. We don't want to interrupt anything they're doing. But they also are feeling the impact of the culture around them. And
Yeah.
so we see things as, we've done homeschooling and we've had our kind of a closed system that worked good for our kids. But the idea is that the culture is going to hell. And it does have an impact on the rest of us. So think about 1983 or even before that, we had a Christian culture a little bit. Even in North Dakota, I've got a test result I can explain. And so the idea is we really, as Christians, we care about everybody and the whole culture, and the advancing Christ's kingdom and the gospel and Great Commission does include all systems and everything that God is over. He's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, so that covers everything. And so in that respect, we want to care about the culture, and it has an impact on us. And so as far as the practical impact, is there going to be so many Christian schools, there's going to be no competition or too much competition or something? Yeah, I don't think that would be the problem at all. Because, yeah, can you imagine that? That would be awesome. The competition would it would cause each Christian school to be even better than they are now. And I've got a test results from the Pierce test. Have you heard of that? From the NehemiahInstitute.com. There's a chart probably on the first page there, but it covers a test given to children in public schools test is given in their churches.
Gotcha.
It's a shocking little picture, trend chart, but it tests them on politics, education, economics, religion, and social issues. Grades them below 0 is socialism, between 0 and 30 is secular humanism, 30 to 70 is moderate Christian, above 70 is biblical theism. 1983, those Christian kids that were going to public schools across the U.S., but it definitely applies here as well, they were scoring in the moderate Christian range, so about a 40%. So since 1983, all the way through the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, down, 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 down. So it went all the way through. The kids are coming out secular humanists that are Christians during the last 25 years. And now, in the last few years, 2020 to 2021, all the kids are coming out complete socialists. So to put it in context of North Dakota, the North Dakota public school system is right now educating 120,000 socialists. And that's the Christians that are in the school. And so the other ones probably even lower score.
So I ran for school board 2 years ago up here. I live in Ray, up here in Ray, North Dakota. And so when I ran, we got into talking about Common Core. And when I ran, I made the statement that our standards are basically Common Core without the actual words Common Core in the standard or in the description. And I took some heat from our local newspaper and stuff, and then I sent in a deal with our standard, our North Dakota standard, and the Common Core standard, and I kid you not, Jim, it was word for word except for where it said Common Core, it said North Dakota standard, and they still doubled down on me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what are we going to do about, if you get elected, what are we going to do about like Common Core standard and CRT, even though it's supposed to be illegal to be in the schools, but it's definitely there.
Right. So there's lots of things that can be done quite easily. I'll take one at a time. First of all, when we talk about Common Core and the math, where it's 2 + 2 feels like 5,
Yep.
it's really an outworking of postmodernism in the mathematics area. And I've got a paper I'm looking at here, and here's a little quote. This is from mathematician Thomas Bertone of 1996, but he was talking about this stuff. The notion of mathematics as objective and eternal is today being replaced among mathematic educators by the postmodernist notion of social constructivism. According to social constructivism, knowledge is subjective, not objective. Rather than being found by careful investigation of an actually existing external world, it is constructed, created by each individual according to his unique needs and social settings. Absolutism is deliberately replaced by cultural relativism, as if 2 + 2 = 5 were correct, etc. And so there's a philosophy there, and some really super good reference on to get a perspective on these things is the summit.org chart. So if you go to summit.org, type in chart to search, you'll find the chart that covers the 6 worldviews and their different aspects, and you can nail what's going on with the Common Core math and know that that really is this postmodern idea of it's anti-realism. And so the same thing with the transgender stuff. They really believe that, and this is a quote from them, the denial, anti-realism in the postmodern worldview is the denial of the existence or accessibility of an objective reality. So it's like, you can't get away from God's reality, but they try.
Where do you find that on the Summit, Jim? I actually have it pulled up here.
Yeah, type in chart in the search.
Okay.
Search, and there you go.
Yeah, then you'll find the chart, and there's a download with 10 pages or so that will give those definitions in the chart documents with it. But
Worldview chart?
Yep. They have curriculum too for kids and adults and Sunday schools, so that people can begin to understand the times. That's the name of their book too. But then what do you do about it in the public schools today? Well, I tell people, you can start today. You don't have to wait for me to be elected. Get John Taylor Gato's book called Weapons of Mass Instruction. He was New York Teacher of the Year, New York City Teacher of the Year. One of the things that made him famous was that he would allow kids to go wherever they wanted to go to learn something. Like if a kid wanted to be a mechanic instead of studying history, let the kid out to go work with a mechanic, and then he'd tell the school the kid was in school. And so the kids really loved them because they were covering for them to really learn something. But anyway, on the book, The Weapons of Mass Instruction, it goes through many things, the history of standardized testing and things like that. And in the back, it gives a recommendation of what students in the public schools can do. It's already optional to take standardized testing for the homeschoolers, but it's also optional for the public schoolers if they knew it. And so all they have to do is write on the top of their paper, I prefer not to take this test, turn it in. So the DPI could start promoting that right there and say, hey guys, if everybody read the book. I already do that with anybody that comes near me. As I say, the standardized testing are part of the program of dumbing down Americans. And it's kind of crazy if you're first hearing this, but it is very interesting. And it really has been part of the idea is to create a pliable workforce so that you don't think You're not a leader. You just follow the train. So here's a quote from Gato's book on that. So the standardized testing based on 1920 book, Human Efficiency, that government schooling was about the perfect organization of the hive. He said that standardized testing, Goddard, was a way to make the lower classes recognize their own inferiority like a dunce cap. It would discourage them from breeding, having ambitions. And there's a whole book on those kind of things, but there's multiple books, so many books, everybody can find it easily. So the testing, it's not needed. You don't need North Dakota standards. They're garbage to speak with. They have a negative impact, not a positive impact. They only exist because somebody thinks we need government leading education in America, which we don't. In 1926, J. Gresham Machen, he was the president of Princeton, founded Westminster later, and he was speaking to the Joint House of Congress and said, give the history of education in the Greek world. And then he said, no, the worst thing that could happen to America is to have a Department of Education and where curriculum was a one size fits all, or like treating people like Ford cars, treating children like Ford cars on an assembly line. And what do we have today? We're using the Secular Humanist Manifesto. If you go to humanistmanifesto.com, I think, .org. And that's from 1933. John Dewey, point 11, is one example where they start with the assumption that man does not have any soul or spirit. So we're just a bag of chemicals. And so everything that happens to kids needs to be molded from the outside. And so those kind of assumptions have built our school system. And so the testing and the curriculum, the standards, if you have the 10 Commandments as your top line, you wouldn't have standardized testing, and your curriculum would be cleaned up because it would not be moral. Because see, the 10 Commandments are considered the moral law, and has been for a long time from early America and since they're written. And so to be able to have that as a standard, and then slowly, kind of work out everything that's not consistent with it.
So Shilo is his little boy isn't feeling well. He stepped away from the computer for a minute. So some of the stuff that we've seen over time here, Jim, we had the critical race theory bill go through legislation 2 sessions ago, but something that we consistently see in North Dakota is the legislators will make something illegal and it just gets restamped, rebranded, and sent back out the door again. Critical race becomes social emotional learning, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But one of the big fights that you see anytime any bill comes forward with education is North Dakota United. Are you familiar with them?
I've heard of them, yeah.
So they are on the opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to a lot of this stuff. So you're going to have an uphill battle with them because they have some pretty big funding behind them. But you look at like the mask mandates, you look at a lot of that stuff, critical race theory, they testify against things like the unbiased law or the hate crime laws. They testify in favor of these things going into place. So you have an uphill fight there because supposedly they're supposed to be representing the teachers, and I don't feel that the teachers necessarily feel that way. Yeah,
well, my perspective is that parents are the ones that need to be, worked with. The teachers have been indoctrinated in the teachers' colleges, and anybody that went to teachers' college, like the superintendents. And so they have a bias built in completely, and it's anti-God, it's anti-family. There's a huge gap between what the parents are wanting and what the school's providing. The parents are afraid of the school board so they don't speak up because their kids will get bullied. There's many dynamics. But now there's a trump card here. I'm just trying to plug in my phone so I don't lose battery power. With the trump card, there's kind of two things, small t trump. The idea is the doctrine of lesser magistrates. Are you familiar with that?
I am, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people listening that aren't. So if you want to touch briefly on it.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick one. Basically, the fifth commandment is about authority, honor thy mother and father, but it applies to all authority. Then derived from that is the idea that all authority, legitimate authority, comes from God. And anything that is not legitimate, it's not from God, and should not be followed. And so that's what Christians used to think. If you go to defytyrants.com and you'll see the book and you'll see examples and all the books are being used on this topic, like the border, southern border, and others, so that Christians are starting to get the point that in the Reformation and after, they knew that they needed to obey God rather than man, and that didn't apply just to preaching and prayer; it applied to every aspect of life. And so that helps clear things up. So it's like, okay, are we going to follow the board because they said we have to do that? No. What is right morally, and to stick to it. The Christians would be the only ones that would probably be able to understand that, but that can be done.
So the problem we're running into with these school boards is they're supposed to be the ones setting the curriculum, but all across the state right now, it seems to be combative. Williston, Harvey, Hillsborough. Not only are these school boards fighting with the parents, but they're also pushing pretty large projects. Harvey, their school board wants to pass $23.5 million towards repurposing, rebuilding, or building new schools up there. So that's unfolding. Hillsborough, how much was Hillsborough? Do you remember, Shilo?
80 million, I think.
Yeah. So we're seeing all these gigantic spending projects coming through.
Yeah.
And whenever you talk to the current DPI, they push it back to the school boards. Well, the school board set the curriculum. So, like, what kind of management style are you going to take when it comes to the school boards, I guess, is where I'm going here.
Yeah, I think what has to be done is to get the parents together separate from the school board first, ideally, so that the school boards are infected by the school board association and the indoctrination system that they've built. And so we really got to get the parents away from the system a little bit to show them that there is another side to the box. And so then they can go back and say, okay, we want this or we want that from the parents' point of view, not school board leaders, at least to start with. Because otherwise the system can't change unless it starts at the bottom and the parents want something different. And I think they do, from what I'm hearing. There's just so many problems. Much to talk about there, but think about, in lean manufacturing, if you use a lean operational approach, you can reduce costs by 40% most of the time when the companies do it. If you think about private schools, they're doing a better job for half the cost. If you think about the N.D.P.I saying that we can't do anything because it's a school board's choice of curriculum and this and that, they can do a lot. I think that's a smokescreen answer, because they can set the parameters, they can set the standards for the teachers, and the work with the standards and interpret what the Constitution is saying a little bit better, so that they're not just doing things that fit all the national agendas that are postmodern and secular humanist. So it's very straightforward. It would be very straightforward to first of all make sure that we're getting the bad influences out of the way by talking directly to the parents first, and working that level first, and seeing if you really want an atheist school, then okay, go for it. But if you don't, let's identify what you really want here, so that you can set your own strategic objective for that school and for each course or level. And so you can have your standards per school that are completely different from the other ones. There's no reason to have national standards or state standards. That's a extreme waste of time, waste of money. It hurts the kids. And I referred that book again from John Taylor Gatto, Weapons of Mass Instruction.
So something that we've seen, and again, this isn't to attack anybody, so don't feel this way. Something that we've seen is heavy donations to our current DPI from the National Education Association and the board members.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To the tune of, I believe it was $25,000 to $30,000 here already, just coming into this election cycle. So when it comes to like your campaign, like I ran statewide, I get it. It's expensive. You got a lot of ground to cover in a little amount of time to do it in. Are you collecting donations? Are you self-funding for all this stuff? Like you on your own?
We're collecting donations. Yep. I haven't really asked, but people give it to me anyway. And so we do need it. And we're using some of our own money, and so, we're going to need more, of course. But yeah, I would expect the other side to have funding from all the standard organizations because they're the ones indoctrinating, and to keep it going would make sense for them. But one point that's interesting, all the money that goes into the schools and the increase in funding and say, oh, we need more money so that we can have better education, that is incorrect mathematics. The education is inversely proportional to the spending. And Cato Institute shows that, but all the homeschoolers know that already. So that if you don't have the money to buy this perfect curriculum for computer science or something, all of a sudden the kid has to figure it out himself and builds his own curriculum. He can figure it out from Best Buy. And so the ideas that they have are really costly and not helping students in the long run. But yeah, so anyway, but campaign, we're doing the first step in our campaign is to address the Republican delegates mostly, so that we can see if there's enough Republicans on board with changing things at the DPI. And if we get a letter of support at the Republican convention, that would be the evidence that that's a positive, and that would launch the focus on the bigger campaign.
The Secretary of State's website's broken and won't let me go into finance tonight.
I'm sorry.
No, it's amazing. Like I was just not to curtail the conversation, Jim, but I usually like having numbers right in front of me, and it's anything you click in the Secretary of State website is automatically demanding you enter your state issued ID. Like won't let you go any further. So that's fun.
Oh
yeah.
boy.
Welcome to North Dakota.
Oh boy.
So you are going to be in charge of the second largest budget in the state, second only to Health and Human Services. DPI, I want to say, is to the tune of $4.6 billion, just funded from the Legislative Assembly, not including anything from DC or anything with grants, which is a pretty healthy chunk of change when you think about it. Are you going to find ways to reduce cost? What's your kind of thoughts when it comes to handling that amount of money?
Right. Yeah. The idea is that the budget is way too much, first of all. And the lean manufacturing, lean techniques, you can use lean accounting, and that is one way to lean out the budget at the school level as well as DPI level. And what that means is you take your revenue statement, your balance sheet, and you start putting it to the value added lines, to make new lines in those statements that relate to the actual value added. So the school, for instance, the parents can say, okay, things we consider valuable that we want value added in our schools is that kids learn regular good old math from like they used to. So then you pick out a book from the 1980s or 1930s, and then you make that happen. Then you put a cost on that. What does it cost to get good math? And then you say, okay, well, what's it cost for the emotional social learning? Okay, is that something you really want in your school, or the standardized testing? And you go through the whole list so that parents look at the list in terms of the value added to the student. So then you can add lines for the superintendent. Okay, parents, how much value are you seeing the superintendent add to your student's classroom? To me, I don't see much. So it could be a lot of budget cuts, but reducing the need for a superintendent, because I don't see what they're doing besides managing a big budget. And so they don't think that's needed at that level. So the taking an approach, also another aspect of the Ten Commandments is the eighth commandment, thinking of thou shalt not steal. Basically, that means not take government money for things that it shouldn't be doing. And so that would be maybe a longer term project to downsize that. But here's a quick story. All the good people left North Dakota in the 1930s. This is from Fred Andre. He was President Reagan's Interstate Commerce Commissioner. His dad was a pastor, and they traveled around North Dakota and preached. And so the people that were in the 1930s in North Dakota that believed the eighth commandment said thou shouldn't steal, that you should not take government funding when you needed it for your farm, else you couldn't farm because it was too dry. And so they left the state at that time. That's what they mean. So people really, really did, even in North Dakota, believe that they should not rely on government funds for things that we think we do today. And so with the same, I believe it's still true and applies to education as well. So if where we feel dependent on the government funding, we need to look for the creative free market alternatives to those things, as there always is. And you find great creativity and entrepreneurship, many things can happen from there, so that you can reduce the budget, reduce the controls that the federal government has because of that funding, right? Because they give a small amount of money compared to the control they get. And then the controls end up bringing in these philosophies, and the philosophies bring in the transgender agendas and the bad math and all these philosophies that we can't sort out. I should mention one important point too, the idea of the impossibility of neutrality. This is a concept where people think that we have a neutral public school. You send your kids there and you've got, everybody's, not talking about religion, therefore it's neutral. That's a fallacy. It's not true. Even the Supreme Court has pointed out that secular humanism is a religion, the only one allowed in the public schools. So it is a religious institution, the whole public school system. It is not Christian. It is anti-Christian in every sense of the word. And so people need to really see that. For instance, you can't teach morality like the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not do this or that, compared to moral relativism, where there is no right or wrong. So you can say you can't do both. So the schools are teaching moral relativism, and that's just one of 50 points. And that's not constitutional from the North Dakota point of view. And it's part of the belief that we can be neutral is one of those things that has clouded our minds or helped people not know that there really is a religious impact on the kids. And that's what we're seeing in the result of all the immorality, as well as the big spending and the agendas. So the money coming through is really, most of it is going to indoctrination. It's not going to the reading, writing, arithmetic, and reality.
Go ahead, Shilo.
Hey, Jim, this is Shilo again. I have a question here, came in by text. It says, Mr. Bartlett keeps saying we when referring to his campaign. Example, when he was asked if he's getting donations or self-funded, he said, we are getting some donations. Basically, they want to know, is somebody helping you with your campaign?
Oh, not any one person. No. Yeah, we've not any big. We don't know Bill Gates or anything like that. So, we're a small farm, and we're a very small farm. And so,
So you're meeting your family then, your immediate family, I'm guessing.
yeah, and then a few of the people, as I've been going around to the Republican meetings, really just a handful of donations, the smaller ones. Yeah.
I had a question come into me too. It said, with the recent investigation of Williston's principal and the arrest of a teacher from Lincoln Elementary, what are some ways to ensure that these teachers are better vetted before allowing them to teach our children? Obviously, that's been something we've been dealing with in North Dakota for a long time.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's so easy answer. Let me think about it for a second.
No, that's a hard one. Take your time.
Well, who do you want your children being taught by? Okay, a secular humanist, a postmodernist, or a Marxist, or Christian? And so the parents. So if you think of it from a local point of view, the parents could decide who gets hired. So even if it was an atheist-focused school, they can pick their atheists if they want in the school. Is what I would think. So then that would be one way to go. From a Christian point of view, you'd think of it as what Jesus said: the student will be like his teacher, and so that means you need to know who they are. So if they went to teachers college, I would say that might automatically or almost automatically excludes them from qualifications, because they've been indoctrinated for sure. And that's even with evidence from the Peers test given to the Christian colleges by Focus on the Family a long time ago, showed that there's a huge impact in the Christian schools and the decline of the Christian schools because the teachers went to teachers colleges. And so I would think, there's a lot of ways to look at that. But the qualifications that are being used now are the wrong ones. Let's start there.
Okay. Well, and I think something like you look at 2020, the government through executive order was waiving background checks on a lot of things, including teachers, including nurses, just because they were struggling so bad with that. But another big thing that came out 2020 was this distance learning stuff. And I know there's a lot of parents that I've spoken to that are not fans. What's kind of your feeling when it comes to this, the remote aspect of what we've seen in the last few years?
Yeah. I looked at it too online, and the girl that works with us at the store said she didn't like it either. I looked at it and I first complimented the guys that created it, because it was pretty fancy software. Read it. When I was looking at it, was something like 6th grade parts of a story, and so it was, you pick who you want to be. If you want to be a purple dinosaur and different things, and it creates a story, and then you just read the story and they'll answer the questions. But then at the same time, I was saying, hey, it'd take you an hour to do that. Homeschoolers could do that in 5 minutes, because you wouldn't be going through this software, and you'd just get right to the point, and then you'd go read a N.D.D.P.I book or some other book, and you'd see, hey, here's the rise and the fall and the peak and different parts of the story. So the way I see the learning setup, I appreciate all the effort in a way, because I know how much work it takes to make that, but it was completely a waste of time, because it's not you don't need that for a babysitter or for the knowledge. And then the actual content there is so minimal that there's way better ways to do that. And so for instance, another aspect in Japan and other places, the older children can teach the younger children, and the older kids or even younger ones can be the janitors. And so there's lots of creative ways that education can happen without spending all the money that we do on these elaborate systems that really are not needed.
I don't know if you've ever looked at it. It's funny you brought up Japan. Have you looked at the way they teach basic multiplication?
No, I don't think so.
No, it's pretty cool. It's all done through lines. So
okay.
I'm not going to bore people with the details, but you should check it out sometime. It's actually pretty clever, and pretty bulletproof when it comes to doing basic multiplication. A lot better than what they're currently teaching. But no, it's been a really interesting journey for everybody as parents. I mean, Shilo and I are both homeschooling for different reasons now. But like my oldest daughter went through public school, I went through parochial school, so I mean, I've been through all three different systems.
Mhm.
The thing that I want to know from me is you look at a lot of our rural communities, they're suffering. Obviously, you understand that considering where you live at.
Yeah.
It seems like the teachers' aides that they bring in, the assistants that they bring in, like even just the salaries that are going out there. Are you going to look at a way because of the size of your budget to kind of balance out pay, make sure that's fair across the board when it comes to stuff like that? Because you shouldn't see just because you're a teacher in Bismarck, Fargo, or Grand Forks, you're making 4, 5, 6 times more than somebody teaching in Max or in rugby or, and I'm not saying that's the situation. Like,
Yeah, I've heard about how the money flows here and there and back and forth, but my view is to always go back to the parents' level activities, and so that the parents, can be taught a little bit of accounting and a little bit of chief financial officer studies, and be able to look at what's really going on at that school, and then say, yeah, this person we really need to pay him more, that kind of stuff. So I don't think from the top down, I can see what's happening is that they try to manage it so everybody gets the big, the same piece of the pie or whatever. But I don't think that's the whole system is broken. And so the best way to fix it is to start at the bottom and make sure that the value is being added, that it's really needed. And so that even ideally, go back to early America when we had public schools, not government-led schools, and they had a little tuition so that everybody had a piece of the pie, piece of the game. So they cared about what was happening in that school. They weren't just trying to grab more government money to make people happy. They were careful with the budget because it was their money. And so things need to be brought back that direction slowly so that the parents feel responsible for the real money and the real learning that's going on, not the administrators, unless they're directly hired by parents to do that thing. But it's top down is not working.
I think the administrators that have proficiency scores 40% or less should automatically have their salary cut in half. And the next year, if they're still under 40% or less, they get cut in half again. Third year, you're out of there.
Yeah, I would get them out of there quicker, because the problem is if they're even taking the test, then you incentivize them by their salary, they're going to teach the test, and so then the kids are under pressure to take this test, and the whole test is bad in the beginning. So I look at it from the background of that test. It's like, okay, let's go to a real test, 0 to 100 math test. Okay, so.
Yeah.
And that's every school can make up their own. They don't need one statewide. And then they can just,
Go ahead, Jim. I'll finish.
It's not hard to know where people are at. So the only reason why people are wanting these statewide standards or national standards is because they believe the government owns the children.
Yep. And that's the problem is the bigger picture. I mean, let's put the scores aside. We're illiterate. Most of our kids nowadays are illiterate. How do you say that, Marvin? Can you say? Thank you.
Words.
Case in point, I do safety and I do trainings for the company that I work for. And I talk about this all the time. I had a 20-year-old kid come up from Las Vegas, and he had to basically stand up in our training class and say, my school just pushed me through because I could play football, but I can't read. And I
Yes.
felt horrible for that guy. And we have anywhere from 6 to 15, 6 to 13 people come through our class every week, and I guarantee you there's at least one or two that cannot read.
Yeah, I was hearing the same thing today. Other places, for 100 years in early America, people's reading proficiency was 99%. And the way they were doing it, they were using Webster's Blueback Speller in the Bible. And if you look at that Webster's Blueback Speller, it's, A is for Adam, and, it's got the phonics in there, and it's got sentences and a little bit of sentence structure. It's a small book, really, a little bit of Westminster Shorter Catechism and the Ten Commandments, things like that. And so for 100 years, that was how people learned and how they got to be smarter than we are.
I agree. I'm showing right now a case in point, or I'm going to if this works for me. The proficiency scores for Tioga. Why is it not doing it for me?
I don't know. Just don't push the red button.
Right. Don't press the red one, right?
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah,
Anyway, well, I guess I won't share it, but I'm gonna read this to you. So the school, and mind you, they want an $80 million deal to make a new school or to expand this school, but their district in math or in ELA is with the advanced at 9%. The rest of the proficiency is 21%.
Yep.
In math, this is the kicker here, Jim. In math, it's a whopping 2%. 2%.
Yep. And
With
that's
3% in advanced.
Yep.
I mean, we're in trouble, and this isn't just in North Dakota. I guarantee you this is all over the state, but all over the country.
Yeah, it's by design. If you understand what's going on with these testing things, also think about norms. So in a norm, the bell curve distribution, so you get a few people who get a low grade, a few people who get a high grade, most people get a middle grade. So that bell is shifted. So if you're saying you're in the schools in the 2 percentile, that means they're on the lower end of the bell curve. But the bell curve isn't like a test where you're taking a math test from 0 to 100. It's the average of everybody in the country or in the state, and so that gets shifted. So it has no meaning in terms of real life. So you're just comparing it against your neighbor. And so if your neighbor is really smart, or all average neighbors, then you'll look bad, and then vice versa.
Gotcha. So we've talked a little bit about putting the Bible back in school and a little bit about the budget. What's going to be your third concern that you're going to work on, your third issue or another issue, however you'd like to say that?
Yep, you bet. So I think a real important part of this process for me is to help people understand the times. Okay, so think of that Summit Ministry chart. And this is what people don't know. The churches have not been teaching this very much. There's another book that I refer to on this topic. It's called Advancing the Kingdom by Don Schanzenbach. And that book, he has a little pie chart, and the 2 pies pulled out called evangelism and morals. So that's what the church has been teaching, evangelism and morals, pretty good. But they've left out biology, economics, education, arts, authority, geography, history, literature, civil law, mathematics, philosophy, psychology, sociology, theology, government, kingdom. So because the churches have not done their job in that respect, somebody needs to give a little bit of an alert on that. So part of my mission, just it always is, and when I teach Sunday school, I do the same thing, is include a little bit of understanding the times discussion anytime I can, because that's the root of the problem. So instead of just comparing test scores and saying no, you shouldn't have transgender issues or the parents should be more informed, but to go, help people understand why we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the greatest need, because then if people understood what's going on, the changes become easy. Because it's the hardest thing is for people to realize that it's not just the surface problems, but there is a deeper root from the philosophies that have filtered up through the times.
I would agree with you. I just in the opening of the show, I was talking about uh, being there at the Safety Council conference, and a lot of the classes I took were with communication and different things, and it kind of hit me sitting in those classes about because obviously I deal with a lot of people and different things, and one of the presenters, his deal is how are you asking your questions? Are you real vague? Do they understand? And I guess that's kind of getting back to what you were saying, is because we always talk about trying to get people involved and stuff, and what can we do? Maybe we're asking the wrong questions, or maybe we're not being clear when we ask questions. So does that make sense?
Yeah, let me point out one thing that I was thinking of. There's
Sure.
I get a newsletter from N.D.D.P.I and the Chalcedon Report. They had an interesting one not too long ago, explaining how things are different for conservatives versus the liberals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And of course, the left, they see their job as changing society using the government's power. Whereas the other side, the conservatives and Christians, see that they are responsible themselves to take more individual responsibility, and are not involved in government and don't want to have big government. And as a result, they're not as involved until something happens bad enough that they have to, right? Because it's like they don't feel the need otherwise. So what we're seeing now in the schools, for example, is a long list of problems. And so everybody sees it. And in a sense, that may be really good in terms of an awakening of people's thoughts and minds, so that they realize they maybe should make a change or learn about what's happening and figure out what they can do to help. So I see that as a sign of the times, and in a way that God's judgment has come. We've been in His judgment quite a while, and we're feeling the outputs from that. And therefore, now God's people start stepping up again.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. So when you're going around talking about, let's go back to the budget a minute. When you're going around talking about the budget and cutting the budget 40%, what are your reactions? What are people saying to you? Are you scaring people, or what kind of reaction are you getting?
Yeah, I don't think that part scares them as much as probably other things. But the idea is, I try to point out the value added point, because if you're really, I'm really not even thinking of the budget cut as the first step. I'm thinking about identifying the value. Okay, what are we doing? First of all, in a given school, talk to the parents. Say, okay, what do you want kids to do in math? You want them to learn this, this, and this, and not? Do you want them to learn emotional social learning? Yes or no? And go through whatever list. And so then you identify the real value added, and then the rest of it is called waste. And there's more types of waste than one. And so that would end up naturally falling off. You could put the money somewhere else, and it'd be more helpful. Take it in the first place, or if there's some other reason for using it. But so I look at it from the value added Toyota production model for accounting.
Gotcha.
I got one last question for you here, Jim. I already touched on North Dakota United because we know they're one of my favorite groups.
Sure.
The other ones that we deal with a lot of are the regional education associations. So like Bismarck to Minot here, it's the Central Regional Education Association. It's spearheaded by Luke Schaefer. They are supposed to be assisting in rural schools, but I think
That
they,
reminds me. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you see them everywhere, but
Yep.
the case I had with them was out at Apple Creek, and when you started asking questions, because not only were they doing the before and after school program, they were their administrators, they were their special education group. Like, they were involved in like 6 or 7 different aspects of the school that were actually conflicting with each other, instead, including writing themselves their own check every month. What's going to be your approach for making sure that systems like that, which is a for-profit company, aren't taking advantage of the North Dakota taxpayer?
Yeah. Yep. First of all, on those external groups, unions, and others, I take the approach that I'd like to talk to them. Just a real, face-to-face, honest, friendly talk, and see what's really the thought there. Are they committed humanists, or are they just doing it because they didn't know any better? I think a lot of people are doing things that they don't know are hurting children, with the philosophy point of view. And so if they, I know that there are committed people as well with the humanist societies and everything through NDSU, etc. And so how to be sure that they're not taking advantage of schools? Well, first of all, if you've got a decentralized operation, then the market is more difficult for them to reach. So they're, instead of going to DPI or some of the leaders that are bringing, making deals at a higher level, superintendents or otherwise, they can go all the way down as far as you can go to whether it's the teachers or the principals or the local superintendent. But so every school should look different, in my view. You shouldn't have, it'd be strange, right, if you had everybody doing the same thing. Think of homeschoolers, how they become pretty unique families, right, when they're all kind of separated and doing their own thing. Then when they come together, wow, it's awesome. Everybody's doing something different and interesting, and they share it together, and it's really, really good. In fact, in 1926, when the J. Gresham Mission spoke, he used the word talking about how I forget the word, but it's how unique every child should be. And today, we look at it as how all the children should be the same. And he pointed out how that would be terrible to lose that uniqueness of the individual. And so that would apply at the school level too, so that if somebody's trying to sell the same program to everyone, it's possible that it's good for everyone. Maybe apology of math or science or something, but the ones that are coming with other philosophies, I wouldn't call it good.
Okay, I do have one last question here. I lied on the other one. Something that we saw, and I've seen popping up across the state too, is a lot of these school districts will have a superintendent assigned to a homeschool group, or they will have them assigned to like the Hutterite colonies, Hutterite, however you pronounce it. I don't want to offend anybody on that one.
Sure.
But what's kind of your mentality with that when it comes to decentralizing then? If they're already paying somebody a salary to watch a district that literally has one child in it, which is something we saw in Hillsborough.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, they have an administrator and an assistant to the one in Hillsborough.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, who owns the children? God and parents are stewards. So what in the world is the state doing here? They think they're protecting them. Well, there's police for that. They don't need social services either, for that matter. But they need, churches to help maybe in difficult situations, or they can. They don't need superintendents supervising homeschoolers. That would be terrible. In fact, I've been recommending to homeschoolers, for years, not to file statements of intent. For us, we've tried that because everybody's afraid to not file their statements of intent. But so we tried it when our kids were, that age, and so little by little, we realized that if we got to know the superintendent just because we were selling them chickens, then he commented He was the one that took homeschoolers to the Supreme Court. So we were a little worried about what would happen, but he started thinking, okay, well, I guess you're not abusing your kids, so won't bother you. And then later we spoke to their superintendent's group, and he was kind of saying, well, homeschoolers aren't that bad, trying to bring along the other superintendents. So the mentality of the superintendents, it's just like the teachers in the schools. They think they know everything. They think they're the best teachers because they went to teachers college. They know the philosophies, and they're trying to evolve society and all these things. So the public school should have nothing to do with homeschoolers. There's no need for them to be involved at all for monitoring or testing or for anything. And so to cover them, so for instance, the DPI, one idea that I had is put on the statement of intents for homeschoolers a link to the Fifth Commandment and, about authority, and explain legitimate authority and the fact that the statement of intent is not legitimate authority, and let them make their own decision. So that could be done without any problems.
What else you got there, Shiloh? I hear the wheels turning.
Yeah, I was trying to think of how I was gonna phrase it. I was just thinking about, just talking about superintendents and they think they know everything and stuff like that. And so I listened to Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Poor Dad author, and of course he's got a podcast and stuff. And he was doing some, I don't know, he had some classes or whatever at ASU, was Arizona State, and he ended up getting kicked out of there because the professors were not liking what he was teaching, because he was teaching about money and finances. And that's the thing is we don't learn that stuff in school or college. I mean, you look at any of it, the money part of it, finances.
Oh, yes.
They've taken home ec out, and he made the statement, which if you really think about it, that when the guys were coming home from Vietnam, the hippies that were there spitting on them and throwing stuff, they have now taken over our education system.
Mhm.
And through these many years since then, with them being in charge of our education system, and I mean, you can point anywhere in the country, it's going on all over. It's pretty much true. And so I just our education system is such an abomination, in my opinion. There's nothing that's going good in our system, and that's some of the reason why we decided to pull our kids out. I mean, my kids are coming home, and of course my kids are, and I'm not trying to say that we're perfect parents or anything, because we're not by far, but my wife ran a daycare, and so my kids are very disciplined and very courteous, and just, they know what they need to do and don't need to do. And at school it was just a wreck for them. I mean, our daughter, first and second grade, she'd come home crying every night, not wanting to go back. And
Yeah.
that was some of the reason why we decided to um, make that plunge for homeschooling, and that's been a great experience for us. With that being said, one thing that comes up all the time is money following the kids when they leave, when they go to obviously property taxes are a thing, and even though that it's not supposed to be used for schools, it's looking that it does. What is your what's your belief with that, about money following the kid wherever it goes, if they go to homeschool, or if they go to a private school, or they go to a different school?
Yeah, I've talked to the guys that get school choice and those things.
Mhm.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't think it's far enough, but it's it's going in the right direction. But it's that's, I would take it a lot further in the sense of the problem, to get it back to parents, and then really to realize that the eighth commandment is also one of those 10 ones, And that's why people left North Dakota, and because they didn't want government funding. So what churches is teaching you to take the money?
So I'm all for putting the Bible back in the schools and everything that you're saying. But my question would be is would the churches actually stand up for this? I mean, could the churches all put their ideologies and theologies aside and actually come together and support something like that? Because
Yeah.
in my opinion, Jim, and I might be wrong, but we've been playing church for 200 years, and this is where we're at. So I
Yeah.
guess my question would be is are we going to get the churches to band together and support something like what you're talking about? Because it's going to take, I mean, it's going to take an army. We both know that.
Yeah. My quick answer is no. Churches are never going to get together, but the people might. The Christians that are
Mhm.
teachable. We've studied this a lot too, and I've really seen that the root of the problem is the theology, which
Mhm.
informs the philosophy, which informs the politics. And so the pastors are pretty committed. If you try to go to any church and try to change something, it doesn't change.
Mhm.
But the people are teachable. There's an old term that they call them fat Christians: faithful, available, teachable. And so,
Mhm.
if the teachable people will be the ones that can change things, and the other people, they might catch on in the next generation.
I like your outlook. I like your outlook. Is there anything we've been going for a little bit over an hour here now? Is there anything that you would like people to know about you in our closing moments here?
Yeah, I guess I've got a website started there with Bartlett, SPI.org, and so that is where I'm beginning to put things. There's a printout where you can print out my little press release there that gives the initial explanation of what I'm doing. I've got one of my speeches that are posted there, and I'll kind of update those as I go along. And then, I think it's a spiritual battle, so prayer is really the biggest thing to do and get involved. I think not only with me in terms of sharing what we're doing with the N.D.D.P.I direction, but help people understand that there is a philosophical root to the problem here. So I've started some blog posts there that will address. I got the CRT one up there and a few others, and a really good pastor that did some great sermons on Christian statesmanship. I posted a few of those there, and then
Jim, what was the website again? Bartlett.
I posted it, Shilo.
SPI, Bartlett, SPI, like Superintendent of Public
Okay.
Instruction, SPI.org.
Okay. I'm going to put that up on the screen here for everybody.
I gotta make it look prettier, but it's there.
Okay.
And so then the Republicans will be the first group we're trying to convince that change is needed. And so if anybody can be a delegate through the Republican district, then they'll vote at the meeting, whatever that is, in March. That would be the next step. Then after that, we got to figure out how do we tell every North Dakotan the points 6 to 10 times for marketing purposes.
Yep. Well, we really appreciate your time, and you're welcome to come on anytime that you'd like, and we'll schedule you. As this campaign season gets kicking off, we're trying to get everybody on that wants to come on to get their message out. So I really do, and I know Marvin does too. We appreciate your time and wish you luck. And yeah, please let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to spread or have you on again. So
Next,
well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time too.
Yeah, next time let's get you on with some working video.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, maybe I won't be driving next time.
All right. Oh no, perfect. Well, you drive safe on the rest of the way home here, Jim.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey.
That was North Dakota DPI candidate, Mr. Jim Bartlett. That was a pretty good interview. You know, that's the first time I've never heard him talk. I've never met the man. I've only heard things through third parties, and so I was excited about this evening, and he's got a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's 4 candidates so far in the race. It's kind of interesting. And then it looks like I got to break away from DPI for a minute, Shilo. So this is the rumblings that I'm hearing on the governor race. We got Kelly, we got Coachman, we got Tammy. Tammy's already pledged, I believe, $5 million of her own money into this. So we're gonna see quite an expensive governor run here coming into the primary.
Mm-hmm.
Thing that I've also heard though that kind of bothers me is it sounds like Burgum is trying to push Michelle Comer to be the lieutenant governor to either Tammy or to Kelly, whoever ends up coming through. Which makes me nervous a little bit. For those of you that don't know, she got appointed to, I want to say it was the Department of Commerce during the horrible overexpenditure on the North Dakota Legendary refresh. All out battle between her and Josh Gallion. Lawsuits, fun things, front page stuff. But she's been reappointed again to a different position. Like, we keep seeing her come forward. And I guess I'm curious why we would try and push candidates to a vice president if we're not running for governor ourselves. Like, if that's Doug, if that's the way you wanted it to be, you should have appointed her as your lieutenant governor instead of Tammy when Brent stepped away. I want to see who Kelly's going to have run for his lieutenant. I want to know who Tammy's lieutenant is, because you got to remember, folks, they are the head of the Senate. The lieutenant governor matters. So it bothers me when I hear that there's still going to be that influence. There's still going to be that push. I mean, we already have a 3-way run for governor. We have a 3-way run for U.S. House. I mean, again, we're looking at establishment versus whatever you want to call them versus conservative. We're going to have a fight. We have District 14 where we have the seated legislators are not even trying for endorsement. District 30 not even trying for endorsement. District 2 not even trying for endorsement, because they're going to attempt to primary out anybody that we put up, folks.
One thing on that race, it's kind of funny that in District 2, because one of the House seats ran for governor, or not governor, for mayor up there in Crosby, and he lost to a write-in, and now he's going to try and have the endorsement, or not run for endorsement of his own district, and he's just going to get on the ballot. That's going to be an interesting race there.
Well, and even if you look at District 24, we have Dan Johnston was appointed to fill out the rest of Cole Christensen's term in 24. But he also got his party endorsement here. Senator Wabana also got their party endorsement, but they didn't try to put it up for a third one because Representative Kiefert is already collecting his signatures and he wouldn't show for his endorsing convention. So there you have a district divided. And what scares me about that particular situation is you're out further east. You may end up seeing a good Democrat crew, and I'm not saying they're good, but where they got their crap together running against these guys. And if they don't work as a team, that could be rough. That could be rough.
Well, maybe we need to have the real thing instead of these knuckleheads that are running around pretending to play conservative, but they're actually on the other team
Yeah.
or for themselves. You know what I mean? I guess that's kind of where I'm at with things as far as the state races. I mean, people ask me, "Well, are you going to go to the convention?" And I'll be honest with you. There's 2 races that I'm excited for. The rest of them, what am I going to do? I mean, honestly.
No challenger for treasurer, no challenger for
Yeah.
insurance commission. No
I'm not
challenger for his tax public service commission. Why has nobody come out against Randy Christman yet?
Mhm.
If you're also worried about carbon, and I'm not saying Randy's bad, I'm not saying Randy's good. We sit and complain, but nobody runs.
Yeah.
Why do you think I ran for Secretary of State, folks? There's multiple reasons, but it was one of those things where, my dad taught me if you're pointing a finger at something or someone, you got to remember how many are pointing back at yourself. And if you're not willing to take that first step, who do you have to blame?
No, I get that. I get that. I mean, you know that I was toying around with running as this year too, but circumstances wouldn't allow me to do that. But we'll see what happens in the future. Who knows? I
So
never thought I'd run for city or school board, so but no, Marvin, we're in between a rock and a hard place as far as I'm concerned because again, there's just and to your point, nobody's running. Nobody's running. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens in April.
yeah, absolutely. For those of you watching the big thing this next week, Monday night across the state, the Republican presidential caucus will be happening. I gotta find that updated sheet. I'll put it up on our website.
Okay.
There are still a slew of district meetings this week. I just don't have the list in front of me. Again, I'll refresh that page, get it out there. Yeah.
All right.
Well, and we do have folks, so we do have invitations out to Darko. We do have invitations out to Baszler. We do have invitations out to Campbell. Like, we're inviting them. In fact, it sounded like somebody indirectly extended invitations out to this Travis guy that's running for the Democrat side for governor and to Hendrickson, who's challenging Kramer. Christina
Christensen.
Christensen. There we go. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. Too many things in front of me. So we'll see if they're brave enough to come on with us. We don't bite, folks. Well, Shilo might. I don't know. Weird.
Gee, thanks.
They were going to interview anybody, whether we agree with you or not. If you're running for office, you want to come on, get a hold.
You bet. I'm running our find us, follow us page, and you can also email us. It's on there as well. So with that, we'll see you guys Friday, it sounds like. So we're waiting to announce that show here for the next day or so. But with that being said, you folks have a good evening and a good rest of the week, and we will see you Friday.